1939 Zenith Model 6D315. It's actually just a standard 5-tube AM radio, but it has a ballast tube, so they're calling it a 6-tube radio. This belongs to a friend's grandma who was born in 1943. He wants to see it work again. She'd like to see it work again, so we are going to electrically restore it. But first resurrect it just to get a sort of an analysis idea on what all might be wrong with it. Is it just capacitors, or is there more that parts we're going to have to source before we get it fully restored? Sort of neat. It's bakelite. So tuning, so volume, nice little handle. It's in decent shape. He wrote down some specs on it. It's a wave magnet radio. This whole thing back here is the antenna. Model 6D315. Pre-war set. Don't work on a lot of these. The power cord is in pretty miserable shape. I doubt he plugged this in. I will plug it in, but I'll be using a dim bulb. I would never plug this in raw, because if it shorts, it's either going to blow the cord apart or burn you or blow the circuit breaker. Let's open it and look at the inside. I also have the service data here on this thing, which this might be easier. I might photocopy this or something. The alignment instructions, the voltage measurements. This is kind of cool if I can read that. Wow, good and dusty on the inside with a nice sheet of deteriorating asbestos dropping its carcinogenic fibers all over. Good thing I opened this one outside, because you do not want asbestos fibers floating around inside if you can help it. So we're going to have to mitigate that. You just don't want to breathe it. Boy, that's really crammed into a small area. Very nice. Let's see. Maybe get the chassis out and then wet that down and get that out of there. What that's for is it's above the power tubes. The purpose of it, and one of those is probably the ballast. The ballast is just like a resistor. Big resistor just generates a lot of heat. The purpose of that is to keep the top of the radio from getting scary hot. Looks like the antenna disconnects very nicely here. I want to clean this before I start working on this. That is coming apart. This knob was very hard to get off, I guess because the plastic shrunk. I had to use 2 screwdrivers and pry it from both sides. You don't want to break that. That's your Zenith knob. My plan with this is to just soak it with high temperature engine block paint. And that should shut down all of the fibers from coming off of it. I might cut this corner off. Yeah, when I pulled this out, this rubbed on it and it knock some off. It's not like you can actually see the fibers there. We can focus in on that. You see the little asbestos fibers. So this would appear to be all original. It does not look high hour. That bulb does not look high hour. It's real tempting just to take it and hose it off, but that would most likely ruin it. Okay, so it looks like the electrolytics were changed. These are not original. You can tell by the solder joint. This was changed. Again, you can tell by the solder blob right there. Doesn't matter, we're going to change all of them anyway, except probably these mica domino things. New power cord, new capacitors. I'll probably add a CL90 to it, inrush current limiter so it soft starts. We want to sort of do this one right, but we'll get it fired up here pretty quick and on a dim bulb and see what it does. But I got to figure out how to remediate this asbestos. Okay, we're going to take this way out away from the dwelling and just start. I usually don't go this far with them before I test them, but I'm going to do a little bit of a thorough de-asbestosing on this thing. Okay, I think I got it cleaned up pretty good. I did wipe some of this with water just to make sure. This is the ballast tube, and the reason for this is it's just a big resistor. The filaments don't add up to the full line voltage, so they're using the ballast resistor as that extra dropper. So it's basically just like a tube that's a filament only. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. It's just a filament only. There's nothing else in there. Looking at these capacitors here, I don't know what these are. They're probably paper, but they're cracked. So those are going to have to get changed. Those will probably just get changed with disc capacitors. Let's start with a 68 watt bulb. That should limit us down to about half an amp. That's on. That's on. What I'm really curious about is the speaker good, the audio output transformer, the field coil, the IF transformers, the ballast tube. Well, the ballast tube's obviously good if we're getting any draw. So this is barely on, and we don't even have a whisper out of this speaker. Actually, I stand corrected, we do. Oh. So it just works?
To draw more tourists. They recently started to allow people to drink on the 3rd Street Promenade.
Let's show you how the Forte formula can give you.
Wow, it's getting that with no problem.
clandestinos, que es un los internos.
이 노래가 제가 윤상의 노래라고 소개를 해드렸죠.
Well, it just works. Just the way it is with pretty much all the original parts, it works, and it's not even humming. So, we could do a recap, an alignment, and a power cord, and I think we're good here. I'm trying to match this up to the schematic so I can see what value these things are. And those appear to be resistors if I'm following the schematic right. Because R4 and 6 are that 1 meg and that 680. And then those tie together and they come down to R9 and R10. One of R10 goes to ground, which that one does right here. It's soldered into the center. And R9, so what, because I can't really read the value on these. One of them I see has a green dot and the other one has a blue dot, but they're cracked and it's all missing. Well, interesting. R9 and R10 are 60 ohm and 50 ohm wire wound, which would explain the green and blue dot. So those are not capacitors. Those are wire wound resistors. I will say, Zenith, you had me fooled for a minute there. I don't ever think I've seen a resistor in that package before. That's why you got to verify everything. I was trying to find on these which side the outside foil was, but they sound the same. I'm not going to worry about it because the actual mass of that capacitor is so much smaller than these big ass things that it's not the same. I'm going to start changing these wax capacitors, and I almost feel dirty doing this because this thing is probably almost 100% American made. And now I'm going to contaminate it and violate it with a bunch of Chinese and Japanese components. All the wax paper capacitors have been changed. Let's see if it still works. Wow, it does not work. I killed it. I was very careful. I double-checked all my values. I did mostly J-hooking so I wouldn't screw up the connections, but I screwed something up.
From the intense heat they face on the job, here's Chris Sedens.
Representative Judy is the bill is personal to. There's a California farm worker who died in blistering heat.
For me in 2004 when it was at work picking grapes for 10 hours straight in 105 degrees temperature in Delano.
I don't know, it was something right here because when I moved this, it woke up. So then I moved this wire. Maybe I melted through this wire when I soldered this capacitor in. I'm tightening these all down a little bit because they're all kind of loose. Just kind of crimp them. I took the tube out, of course.
This morning, we've been tracking the story since it happened. All 4 people inside a disabled car killed. Here's Emily Valdez.
It happened just before 1 o'clock in the morning on the 605 freeway.
Good. Well, pre and post recap, it's working exactly the same. So we'll do the electrolytics and the cord and an alignment and then add probably a CL90 inrush current limiter. I went through and tested all the capacitors that I took out for leakage and lossiness and value, and believe it or not, all of these were really good. Perfect. Tested perfect. Wide, full wide eye opening, no leakage up to 300 volts. These were all leaky at 150 volts. So these were actually in excellent shape. I want to do an experiment here and see if you can follow along. I want to figure out how to substitute this ballast tube with what value of capacitor. Or a better way to say that would, I want to figure out what value capacitor, AC capacitor, will substitute this ballast tube. Now you can see it has two resistors in it, and the second one is a small resistor just for the diode. We're going to ignore that right now. We want to figure out, and it looks like they have it set so it won't work if you pull it out, but we want to figure out what value capacitor we need to go from pin 3 to 7 to get the correct amount of heat in the filaments. Now this is not just as simple as putting a voltmeter or a scope across the filaments of one of the tubes and adjusting the capacitance for the right voltage. It doesn't work like that. Bob Anderson did a fairly comprehensive discussion about this on the Motorola 7-inch sets. So the way I've come up with that we're going to try and get the value is I have connected I believe this is a 24 volt lamp across the 6A8 filament. So this lamp is in parallel with the filament of a 6 volt tube. Now right now I'm on raw line voltage.
It happened just before 1 o'clock in the morning on the 605 freeway just north of...
So I'm going to let it fully warm up, and you can see that this lamp is just barely lit. Now my idea is to substitute this ballast tube with AC capacitors and try and get the same amount of illumination out of that light bulb. And the way I'm going to do it is I got these 2 microfarad AC capacitors. And so I'm going to start to stack them in parallel till I get about the same amount of glowing here. I'm going to go back to the bulb there, and you can see that that light goes almost all the way out. Okay, I'm going to bypass the lamp. You can see the difference there. So we want to get about that amount of heat in that light bulb. Also, I want to note that our wattage draw is 38.3 watts with the ballast tube. I got 3 and 4 bridged together. I'm connected between 3 and 7, and I'm starting off with 4 microfarads. And I got 2 watts. That's not nearly enough. Okay, I've got 8 microfarads here, and I'm looking right about the same. Let me go up to 10 and we'll see the difference. Okay. You see it gets just a little bit brighter with going 2 more. So 8 to 10 microfarads seems about right. Look at the difference, 23 watts. This is a 10 microfarad ceiling fan capacitor. And 10 microfarads is just a little bit too big, I think. The filaments are just a little bit too bright.
An environmental threat. Karen Adams reports.
Here at Santa Monica Beach, CalPERC's
Fiona Hines released the results of their new report.
Our report found is that vape waste is actually increasing. We're now throwing away 5.7 vapes each second in this country. That's about 500,000 vapes each year. And if you were to line them all up in a row, that would stretch the length of the U.S. 3 times.
This, as the group says, there's been a 52% decrease in disposable vape sales because of state law banning flavored vapes. Hines says the devices are a health and safety risk if not disposed of properly.
They have an embedded lithium-ion battery, which creates fire risk. They're also encased in a plastic shell, which will never fully biodegrade. And they contain e-liquids, which are often acute toxins.
Heal the Bay's Emily Parker says a lot of those vapes and their toxins are ending up on LA beaches and in the ocean, which is not good for marine life.
Studies on vaping liquids have actually found that they can cause decreased hatching success in fish embryos, and they can even cause impairments in like bone and cartilage development in these animals, and they can cause DNA damage.
CalPERG and Heal the Bay would like to see a shift away from disposable vapes to reusable and refillable options to reduce the threats from the device's toxic waste. In Santa Monica, I'm Karen Adams, KNX News.
E-liquids. Do these things have e-liquids in them? E-liquids. I need my e-liquids, man. Hook me up with my e-liquids for my vape. Gotta have my vape. So I want to say 8 to 9 microfarads is right about where 8 to 8.5 microfarads. Now you'd have to add a resistor, a dropping resistor for that light bulb. So yeah, 8 to 9. I mean, you could get away with 10 microfarads. You'd just be running them a little bit on the hot side. E-liquids for my vape. So if you look at the filament voltage across the tube, it's right about 5 volts. If you go to 10 microfarads, I'm going to go up to 10. It goes up to about 6, and you would think that's right, but it's just a little bit too bright. So if I measure the voltage with the ballast tube, it's 5.1 volts. But yeah, the brightness is the same as 8 microfarads. So I'm looking at the brightness down in there. I'm looking at that brightness as well as the light bulb. And it's about the same with the 8 microfarads. So what I've heard is you're not supposed to be able to measure this because the capacitors throw off the wave shape and the duty. So it's not supposed to measure right. So you have to go by the intensity of the filaments. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've heard. But anyway, regardless of any of that, 8 to 9 microfarads for this radio as a substitute replacement for the ballast tube, and you get rid of half of the power consumption. Half of the wattage going into this radio is heat coming out of that ballast tube. I made a mistake and I need to correct it. I went back and reviewed Bob Anderson's video on the Motorola VT71 ballast substitution, and it's not the capacitors that you can't measure the voltage, it's the diode. It's when you're doing a half-wave rectification. So let's try that on this just as an experiment. So going back to the experiment in the previous clips, it would be about a 10 microfarad capacitor. If the voltage measurement is in fact accurate with the meter using the capacitor method, it's about a 10 microfarad. So I'm going to try and substitute with a single diode, half-wave rectifying it. So you can see how bright that is right now. The diode is the method where you have to get the visual relation. I've pulled the ballast out and I've just substituted it with a diode. So we're just half-wave rectifying the voltage to the filament. So here goes. I'm starting through the dim bulb. I don't think it's going to be enough in this circuit. In the Motorola sets, you need to use a diode plus a resistor. And of course, the resistor is going to dissipate some heat. Let me give this a minute to warm up. I don't even see any filament here. This might not be enough. Actually, I'm hearing something. Okay, I'm going to bypass the dim bulb. Oh, look at that.
It blew up, killing all three of those people. As for the second, we don't know if it is inert or not, or where it is.
So the diode seems just about perfect. So measuring it, we have 4.7 volts, and we know it's higher than that based on the brightness of the light bulb. So let's look at that. And then let's go to the 10 microfarad capacitor. This is back to the capacitor, and it's a little bit dimmer. So I think the diode is probably okay. So it looks like our filaments total 68 volts. This substitution would make running the dial lamp a little bit tricky because the dial lamp is 250 milliamps. So you might have a condition where if the dial lamp burns out that the tube filaments don't get enough juice. But anyway, this was just an experiment. This is what I love about electronics. You can experiment with different things. So we know we can substitute this with a diode or a 10 microfarad capacitor. The diode is a little bit hotter than the capacitor as far as a little bit hotter voltage. You can see this is dimmer. So I'm going to skip back and forth live. So that's the diode. That's the capacitor. Diode, capacitor. I know it looks almost exactly the same, but it's a little bit brighter with the diode. The wattage consumption with the capacitor is 29.8. With the diode, it is 34. Very close. Like 4 watts more with the diode, but the power factor changes. Power factor with the diode is 0.86. Power factor with the capacitor is 0.69, 0.70. Recapping is complete, and new power cord is installed. So they had 220 microfarad capacitors in here. And condensers of quality. I checked the ESR on these. They're both excellent. So that is a correct statement. They had 220s in here. The schematic calls for a 40 and a 20. So I ended up going with a 33 and a 22. A little bit lower, but will probably be okay. I also added a inrush current limiter, and I used one of these 220 ohms cold. So what this is it's a thermistor, and when it's cold, it's 220 ohms, and as it heats up, the resistance drops. So it soft starts the radio. I ended up just putting it right here because I felt like that was probably the safest place to have it because it does get warm. So let's try the radio. Alignment is next, and then I believe it's done. Oh, got to deal with the asbestos.
Test scores in the Los Angeles Unified School District have reached a new high after years of low. During the depths of the pandemic, we get more from downtown LA and John Baird.
The superintendent made the announcement about the test scores at Walt Disney Concert Hall as...
Okay, it still looks like it works. It's interesting. I have some hum now that I never had with the old capacitors. I had 0 hum with those old capacitors. Yeah, I need to go with a bigger capacitor here. Or did I... Because that gets rid of the hum, or did I get the capacitors reversed? I don't think so. I see what happened. I screwed up. I grabbed a 10 and a 33. This is supposed to be a 20. So that's, yeah, I screwed that up. Okay, I got to get another capacitor for that. Okay, 455 AM modulation. We're just going to clip this wherever we get some sound. I'm clipping it right on the insulation. This thing sounds like it's right on alignment. It's pretty sensitive. That one was a little off. That one was right on. That one was right on. It sounds about right.
FM.
Continuing our coverage this evening of the death today of music legend Ozzy Osbourne at the age of 76. He performed a few weeks ago with Black Sabbath, the band's final performance in Birmingham, England. Emily Valdez got more from Jim Oswald, music writer for Variety.
I thought he was like, Keith Richards, just going to live forever.
He seemed indestructible for such a long time, but once he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, he started going downhill. He said recently that he couldn't walk, and of course he performed that last concert just 2 weeks ago.
I am gluing the lovely asbestos sheet down with this, and then I am going to soak it with this. So that should neutralize the fibers from peeling off and going into the air. Okay, well that's soaked down pretty good, and I don't think it's going to shed. There it is, all glued down and sealed up and safe, hopefully. Got the correct electrolytics installed, so this thing is 100%. We're ready to go. Put it back in the case and do a dial scan with it. I don't expect the performance to be much better than just a standard 5-tube, AM table radio. This antenna is really very interesting. It's got this kind of rope and wire mesh in front of it and behind it. It's just a regular loop antenna. And I decided to hose this off in case there was any asbestos in it. And it smells like a wet dog, so I don't know what it is. Horsehair? But yeah, how does this work with this wire mesh thing in front of and behind the antenna? I just don't understand how this grounded copper mesh screen in front of and behind the antenna coil improves reception. Can someone explain this to me? Yeah, it's way out of tune right now, and I tried getting and adjusting the antenna trimmer, and I can't really get a peak. Maybe I'll let that dog hair grill dry out for a couple hours, and then we'll see how it's working. It's been drying out for several hours, so we're going to go ahead and do a band sweep with it and see how it performs. It appears that it's picking up the old school station out of Santa Barbara, which is extremely impressive for a basically a 4-tube, 5-tube radio.
Coming up on Old School 99.1 Santa Maria and 94.1 Santa Barbara. With Progressive.
This is a hot radio.
Ziegel, also aus Bausteinen der DNA und RNA hergestellt. Das sind Substanzen, die spezifisch an Proteine zum Beispiel binden kann und eine sehr spezifische
La basura. La basura siempre huele feo.
Segovia Groups, queremos ser su agencia.
Feliz de la vida, yo, pero encantadísimo. Otras 5 horas más. 精品推荐，深度11天，感受。아빠로서 사랑없게 심.
Single-handedly coordinated the 5th annual.
My heart. But friends, watch this.
La depresión puede.
There is a street at Ballast in Long Beach because of the band's Warped Tour.
Al mundo de la ciencia, de la cultura.
Went all over the inside of the plane, into the instruments.
Progressive Insurance.
And founder of Retirement Through Design, as well as, of course,
And I actually
Benefit to suffering. I mean, like, I get geeked out over this kind of stuff.
like an open heart surgeon.
And there's no reason why it to be changed. As I pointed out, though, I was
You could unlock over in personal and business credit. That's exactly what
those bad things going on there.
Experience extraordinary.
Well, I got to admit, I'm kind of impressed. I guess that copper coil grill thing actually does improve something. Anyway, there it is. Pretty much a good electrical restore of a 1939 Zenith. I did go through and check all the resistors. They're all within 10 or 20%. So good resistors in this thing.